Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel to further discuss what's going on with this invest. There's a live look over Biloxi, Mississippi. This is another spot that could be impacted by this storm. Mike, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. You're in Biloxi. This is a town that is well versed in hurricane prep. And of course, we're not discussing, a hurricane out of this. But nonetheless, we could have a homegrown threat that could bring in some heavy rain.
Yes, I think right now the big concern is heavy rain, and everybody is certainly thinking about it because it was 20 years ago next month that they went through Katrina. First things first this morning, look at this sunrise. It's about as epic as it gets here along the Gulf Coast. Of course, this time of the year it doesn't rise over the water, but rises over the land. Doesn't look quite as orangey as it was just a few minutes ago, but we've got sunrise here just a minute or so away at 6:04 Central. And look at the Gulf. It's more like the lake here this morning. Hardly a ripple on the water. We had a little light chop yesterday with some breezes, but this is not unusual this time of the year. Water temperature, by the way, 86 degrees. It's bath water like we talked about 2 weeks ago with the trip from Clearwater to Jacksonville to Folly Beach and up to North Myrtle Beach for the landfall of Tropical Storm Chantal. Let me first show you the radar forecast in motion through Thursday. So this, whatever we have, is going to cross the Gulf. Right now it's an invest, and then get into the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane hunters are scheduled to go out there later this morning and early this afternoon. By 10 a.m. we'll know if they're going to go or not go. They may scrub the flight today. And then the issue is, where does it go? The hurricane models want to take it a little farther south off the coast, then bring it back up towards Louisiana later in the week. The GFS and Euro Ensemble, the means are along or south of the coast, so it's closer to the coast, which would lower the threat of intensification. Whether we have a depression or not, again, as we talked about just 2 weeks ago with Chantal, it's mainly at this point going to be a rain event. And the rainfall forecast, this is going out through Friday into Saturday. Notice the heavier totals out over the Gulf, kind of clipping the Florida Panhandle, but look in southern Mississippi and across Louisiana, southern Louisiana, south of generally I-10, you've got totals of anywhere from 3 to 5 inches. So right now we're looking at a rainfall threat. How much it develops remains to be seen. We may get a depression, we may not. We could get a storm, but I can tell you the hurricane intensity models, albeit not the greatest and not that reliable, a lot of the times are not forecasting a tropical storm for what it's worth, but stay with Fox Weather. Britta, Craig?
Mike, it's so interesting because looking at the computer models, because now that it's an invest, it changes how the models come in, really hones in on the forecast. They're really not showing a lot out of this. But on the flip side, you got to admit that circulation looks a lot better off the coast of Florida than any of the computer models were showing. So just from your experience of looking at these systems, what do you make of that?
Well, first, it's got to go across the Florida Peninsula. So what does that do to the circulation we have, the low-level circulation? Right now, there's no convection wrapping around it. That's a good thing. Hurricane hunters may go out there. We'll see. If they don't, they'll probably reschedule a flight for tomorrow. But if it stays north and hugs the coast, then you have a lower chance of it becoming a depression or even a low-end tropical storm. But as we talked about, the difference between a strong low, an invest, and a low-end depression or a depression, and then a low-end tropical storm, I should say, is not much. Yeah. It's primarily, it's the rain impact. Yeah. As we saw with Chantal, it did end up coming in as a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm, but the highest wind gust was at the pier in North Myrtle Beach, or at Myrtle Beach, rather, 56 miles an hour. We had a few power outages. It was all about the rain, and surprisingly was the heavy rain that caused all the issues well inland. Remember Chapel Hill, later Sunday and Sunday night, we had houses surrounded by water. Yeah. I was kind of surprised about those pictures, but on the coast we had 3 to 4 inches of rain, so maybe that's what we end up with.
Yeah, I think about Jackson, Mississippi, Alexandria. We'll see how the rain part of this forecast works out. That is Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel. Mike, thank you so much for the good conversation on the forecast. We do have to move on to what's
All right, so let's go ahead and take it out to Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel. Mike is joining us from Biloxi, Mississippi. Mike, you're obviously on the ground right there, beachside. Beautiful start. I mean, I can see how calm the water is behind you. But on the ground tracking what is now Invest 93L, going to look a lot different here in about 48 hours.
Yes, it should. We should get some rain and thunderstorms in here. First things first today, we have another heat advisory today from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. along the Gulf Coast into Louisiana. That means it's going to be hot and sticky. Our heat indices may top out at 105, even 107, 108. That goes from 10 to 7. Our high this afternoon, 95, the actual temperature. But our dew points are in the mid-70s. This morning, we're starting off in the mid-70s, and it was darn comfortable at sunrise. Now the sun is starting to heat up, and I can feel it on my face already here at just after 7 a.m. Central. You mentioned the Gulf. Look at this. I mean, it's like a lake. We have just a little ripple out here. This is not that unusual in the summertime when you don't have much wind. I mean, waves are caused by wind. The energy gets transferred to the surface, and you get the wave action. And there's very little tidal range on the Gulf point. You can see where low tide and high tide are. So we have very little to worry about. And we're not going to worry about surge at this point by any means. First thing I want to show you is the radar forecast. So the center of this invest is off the coast, not far from Cape Canaveral, the Melbourne Space Coast area. And it's forecast to go across Florida and then into the Gulf later today, tonight, into Wednesday. And then after that, the models differ. Does it hug the coast? Does it go south and come north into Louisiana? And what do we have? Do we have a depression? Do we get a storm? Well, the hurricane hunters are scheduled to go out there later this morning. We'll see if that mission is a go. They'll make that decision in the next couple of hours. And even if they don't go or not, we know what's going to happen today based on all the forecast. That spin is going to cross the peninsula, and most of the rain today will fall in Florida, not here. We don't expect any rain here today. It's going to be sunny, hot, and sticky. As far as rainfall totals, now this is the forecast right on through Friday and Saturday. Notice the heavier totals will be here in Mississippi and Louisiana. Here in Mississippi, especially near the coast, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches, and into southern parts of Louisiana. This is all subject to change based on the track and what we end up with. But again, along and to the right of the center of a depression, if we have one, or a storm, but if we don't, we're going to get the most rain. A lot of that, depending on the track, may fall over the Gulf and not over the land. A lot to watch and a lot to be determined, but right now we're not expecting any hurricane action. We may not even get a tropical storm. It remains to be seen if we're going to have a tropical depression, but the rainfall will be the main impact, like we had with Chantal just a couple of weeks ago. So, Marissa, beautiful day on the beach. You know, I've had a lot of these lately. And nobody's complaining. Nobody's complaining after last year's hurricane season.
Yeah.
If we can just cover tropical storms and depressions, that would be fine with us and fine with everybody else in the areas along the coast, the Atlantic and the Gulf.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you look at how quiet it is on the Gulf behind you. When you consider heat indices are going to be around 110 today, where we have those heat advisories, I guess it could feel a little bit better trying to jump into that water that's near 90 degrees, but it's just hot out there, and in some way maybe the rain would bring a little bit of relief. But to your point, we don't need flooding rain.
I don't think that's going to happen today. I think the chance of rain here is pretty close to zero.
Yeah.
Just too stable now, maybe off to the west and certainly over the Florida Peninsula. We've had some rain, some heavy rain this morning in the Florida Straits just north of Key West and the Middle Keys and Lower Keys. And there were some showers this morning around the Space Coast associated with the invest. And we'll wait to see. Again, it's just to watch and wait. And we'll see what happens when it gets into the Gulf. The water is warm, but the upper level winds, the dry air getting in train, the conditions are not favorable for any kind of rapid intensification, much like they were with Chantal. Although Chantal took off right before it made landfall.
Yeah, right before heading into the Carolinas, and then, of course, taking all of that moisture, all that rain into North Carolina especially. So hurry up, wait and see, and I know you'll be on top of it. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel out of Biloxi, Mississippi, where it's going to be a hot one. Thanks, Mike. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel joining us out of Biloxi, Mississippi. Mike, I guess the story for today, as you mentioned earlier, it's really just the heat. The Gulf, it is quiet, almost looks like glass behind you. But I guess the issue would be getting through today, the heat, and then watching what becomes of Invest 93L.
Exactly in that order, Marissa. The heat is going to be the story today. We have another heat advisory for the Gulf Coast. That goes from 10 to 7. Right now it's 81 over at GPT, the Gulfport Biloxi Airport. And heat index is now 85 with that dew point of 75. So our heat index today going up above 100, as high as 105, maybe as high as 110. Thus the heat index, and the wind is offshore. We're northwest now, 7 to 8 miles an hour. That's not going to help us. Not that a sea breeze would help us a whole lot, because the water temperature is 86 degrees. So if the wind's off the water, theoretically, it would knock the temperature back into the mid to the upper 80s. But we've got an offshore wind and hardly a cloud in the sky. Some high cirrus clouds today. Right now, we may get some cumulus. There's some cumulus offshore. Lloyd Alfred will pan out there, some seagulls, and in the distance, some cumulus clouds. But we don't expect any rain on this part of the Gulf Coast today. That is going to change. Let me show you the future radar forecast. First things first, we've got this spin off the Space Coast to Florida. Now that's got to go across land. When we talk about tropical systems going across land, they lose their energy source. There's the friction of the land, and we don't have the system's weak to start with. So what happens when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico? Does it survive that trek? Well, that remains to be seen. Then once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, what kind of development possibilities does it have? Well, the water is warm. We know that, upper 80s in that part of the Gulf. We were there last week. But then we have to look at the wind and where does it travel? The European ensembles, the mean is right along and just inland or off the Gulf. The hurricane models take it south and then into Louisiana Thursday night into Friday. So the timing and the intensity is still up in the air. But the bottom line is we can show you the rainfall forecast through Friday and Saturday, and that's pretty much a given. It's going to be a rain event, as all systems are that are weak. Usually that's the major impact, not the wind and not certainly the surge. So that's what we're looking at right now. Potentially a tropical depression. A tropical storm is not off the table, but that would be a low-end tropical storm, and along the I-10 corridor, especially from the Florida Panhandle into Mississippi here and then into Louisiana, we get those rainfall totals in some spots potentially 3 to 5 inches, and that could set off some flash flood warnings. Here on the coast this morning, the tide is coming in. It'll be high this afternoon, but the tidal range, look at this. It's about a foot. And sometimes they only have one high tide a day here. Very interesting thermocline because it doesn't drop off, it goes out like that, and that makes a difference when you have to forecast surge. But right now, Marissa, we're not worried about surge. We're not worried about the wind being impactful. We're just worried about the rain and just find out what's going to happen. We'll see if the hurricane hunters take that flight in late this morning. We'll know within the hour if they're going to go or not, and then from there we'll see what we have left in that spin as it crosses the peninsula. Right now there's not a lot of convection, certainly not wrapped around it on the satellite photo.
Yeah, it's been lopsided, I guess you could say, from the start, but as of now, not much to offer it. A little bit of storm activity for the eastern coast of Florida. We'll see. Either way, we know Biloxi's getting ready for some heavy rain, and we'll see what else. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel there.
And they're fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and they're fine with that. After, we're coming up on 20 years of Katrina. There's still a lot of empty lots here in Gulfport, Long Beach, where I was for Katrina 20 years ago. There's still sidewalks that lead nowhere from Hurricane Camille, and that was in 1969. So memories, recent memories 20 years ago, and then memories of the older folks here. I mean, I remember the summer of '69, so much going on, the moon landing, Woodstock, Camille, and then the horrible tragedy in Southern California with the murders. So it was a very busy summer. Camille was certainly the one for the record books until Katrina came, and the surge right here was 28 feet in this area, the highest surge on record for any U.S. landfalling hurricane.
Yeah, you get the scars of these prior systems, and when you weather the worst, it does help you better handle what's ever headed your way. But hopefully, and not likely so, this will be as bad. But this area knows tropics very well.
We're just, we don't even want to plant that seed.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that people that went through Katrina, that or remember it, they're 25 or they're 30 years old or older, know what they had to do, what this place went through, the recovery, and they know the worst, and they're hoping for the easy way out this time, which we think is just going to be primarily a rain event.
All right, and when, so next 24 to 48 hours, 72 hours, and hopefully this is all over. Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel joining us there out of Biloxi, Mississippi, where it's going to be a hot one. Thanks, Mike. Joining us out of Biloxi, Mississippi. I mean, until everything starts to unfold, it's all about the heat, Mike. It is July after all. But the other part of this, to see from the NHC that orange circle, that area where we have possible development, it's always a little intimidating, I should say, when it's that close to home.
It is, and a lot of people really take a look at that locally. I mean, the folks on the street here and last week, Florida up to the Carolina beaches, they see that blob, and you really have to decipher it. Yesterday, I was at the restaurant here at Shaggy's, and some of the waitresses came up and asked me, where's the storm? Well, we don't have a storm yet, but the way the information gets filtered through social media, you have to really get in there and, give a delineation of what we actually have. Right now, we don't even have a depression. We have an invest. Let's go. I guess we can get to the current radar or the visible satellite. Either one will work, but you can see the spin, and it is starting to move towards the coast. On the radar, it looks like the center is right near Cape Canaveral, maybe a little farther north, but it is making that expected move inland. And what happens when it goes inland? Well, you deal with friction. You lose the warm energy source of the water. The water temps over there, I believe, in the low 80s. They were about a week ago. Again, the peninsula is not very wide. And now with a hurricane, you've got a whole set of different statistics there, because you've got a major storm and it can weaken down to, say, a weaker storm. But with this, we don't even have a storm. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that rotation survives its trek into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico later today and tonight. The bottom line is we're going to get heavy rain along the Gulf Coast, more so in Florida today, and then along the coast, I-10, certainly to the beaches. And this is our forecast rainfall total between now and Saturday. And you can notice the higher numbers, the Mississippi Gulf Coast into Louisiana, 3 to 5 inches, and that's based on the current forecast track and intensity. Whether it becomes a depression or not, we're still going to get the rainfall, and it's going to be along and to the right or to the north of the center, and that's going to drag the moisture in. A lot of that will fall out over the open waters of the Gulf. And speaking of the Gulf, look at this. Looks like a lake. It is very, very quiet this morning. A little wind off the land, which is going to heat us up. It's 84 now at the airport, just inland. Heat index now, Marissa, is up to 91 degrees. So a heat index advisory, heat advisory for high heat index values is up today for this area, with values approaching 105, if not approaching 110, as highs hit 95, along with that dew point in the mid-70s. It's going to be dangerously hot out here. Make sure you hydrate as much as you can. And then by tomorrow afternoon, we should start to see some storms bubbling up in this area, with most of the rain based on the current track and speed Wednesday night into Thursday night. And then we get into the weekend, it's back to more typical summertime weather on these beaches along the Gulf Coast. Marissa?
Yeah, I was looking at tomorrow and the potential of a heat advisory, at least until the rain moves in, but which is the lesser of two evils, right? The intense rain that could be unfolding by tomorrow night, or maybe some of the heat that you're dealing with. Either way, Mike, I don't see much of a breeze. So it doesn't feel like there is much relief. Typically, you think, I'm going to head to the beach, maybe a little bit of a sea breeze, but, I mean, it looks stagnant.
It's pretty stagnant right now. A wind is right off the land, north, northwest. Boy, we can swing around and show you one of these palm trees. Lloyd Alford, my intrepid photographer there. Not much movement with the sea oats there on the beach here. 3-4 miles an hour. Sea breeze is probably not going to set up today. It will be hot everywhere. A little cooler if you're right here, or if you go in the water, you can cool off. 95 air temperature, water temperature 86. So you got a little refreshment going in, but then when you come out of the water, you don't have much of a breeze to kick in what little evaporative cooling you would get with a dew point of 75. It's not like the dew point's in the 50s and you come out and boy, it's like coming out of the shower in the winter. You feel that evaporative cooling. That's not going to be the case today. So we're going to be here in Biloxi today. More than likely stay here for tomorrow as we watch what develops in the northern Gulf, and we'll know in the next 24 hours what we're going to have. I don't think there's going to be too many surprises unless it dives south and has more time to fire up. All in question at this point, but count on the rainfall, and that'll keep the temperatures down in the mid to upper 80s instead of the mid 90s here for a couple of days before it heats back up for the weekend.
All right, and we'll be watching. To your point, we will certainly know more by tomorrow morning. Fox Weather storm specialist Mike Seidel joining us out of Biloxi, Mississippi this morning. Thanks, Mike.
Well, we already know that if this doesn't.
Biloxi, Mississippi this morning. Everything offshore, Mike, and well offshore, in fact, from where you are here along the coast, the Gulf Coast in Mississippi. It's just going to be hot today. Hot today, heat indices well above 100. In some regards, maybe that rain would bring some relief.
Indeed. Highs Wednesday and Thursday in the mid to upper 80s with that rain moving in. So we'll take the cooling rainfall as long as we don't have horrible flash flooding. Speaking of flash flooding, so far in July, there have been a lot of flash flood warnings. In fact, yesterday was the most the National Weather Service has issued on a day in July since they started keeping records almost 40 years ago. They had 96 yesterday, 96 flash flood warnings yesterday. And so far this year, the most they've had on record since 86. So it's been the year of flash flooding. We had the horrible flash flooding last night, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. We've shown you the pictures and talked to Haley Meyer up there in Jersey with the damage and the follow-up. Back here, we're expecting flood watches to go up, if not later today, tomorrow, along parts of the Gulf Coast, including here in Mississippi, and certainly in Louisiana. Now, the big update out of the Hurricane Center and from Keesler, which is right up the road where the hurricane hunters fly, they have canceled today's mission that was going to go out late this morning. The next mission is scheduled for tomorrow morning, and they'll get out there early tomorrow afternoon. So no hurricane hunter aircraft looking at this system today. So we move on to tomorrow. Move on to the Gulf. Look at this. We actually have a ripple on the water right now, Marissa. Hard to believe, but the wind is still blowing offshore. North at about 7 to 8 miles an hour at the airport. It's up to 86, and our heat index is a lovely 92. It's not quite Bangkok or Manila. And way off the coast, we see a bit of an anvil. There's a storm way off the coast. Rain chances here today are pretty low. They increase tomorrow and certainly by Wednesday night and Thursday as whatever we have draws closer to where we're standing here on the Gulf. Meanwhile, as we go through the next couple of days, you can see that radar forecast, and the rain comes across the Gulf. Whether we have a depression or not, we're going to get the heavy rainfall here. The other question is, does it go farther south in the Gulf, have maybe a better chance to organize and develop into a minimal tropical storm? That remains to be seen. But even a minimal tropical storm, the main impacts, generally speaking, are the heavy rainfall. And there are the rainfall totals we're forecasting through the end of the week. We've got 3 to 5 inches here, Mississippi Gulf Coast. And look at southern Louisiana. That may be the big story coming out of this. The heavy rain it falls there, especially south of I-10, down towards some of those parishes like Vermilion Parish and down towards Grand Isle. Those low-lying bayou areas may get the most rain. In fact, the WPC Weather Prediction Center has some totals down there, storm totals of upwards of 6 to 7 inches. That remains to be seen. But Marissa, a hot day here in the Gulf, a ripple on the water, a whiff of wind. So stay hydrated. And throw on your sunscreen. I lathered up this morning about 5 a.m. The worst part about sunscreen is when you start perspiring, sometimes it'll get in your eyes and your mouth, and it doesn't feel good in your eyes, and it doesn't taste good either.
It burns real bad. And remembering, Mike, you have to reapply it after a couple of hours to make sure you're not baking in that sun. Hey, real quickly, too, where you are in Biloxi, I'm so used to seeing a beach shot with people actually lounging at the beach. Is this one of those beaches? Because it is awfully quiet.
It's not a very busy beach. I came in yesterday and was on the beach or riding up the beach, eating here at the restaurant around 2. This is a very low activity beach. Now we look down towards the east, and Lloyd will spin around, and there's some action down there. It's a place where they rent jet skis and other water type craft. And there are some folks out there. But remember, it's only 10 a.m. here in Biloxi, so it's a bit early for a lot of folks to hit the beach. But you're right, the beaches I were at last week, Clearwater, Jacksonville, Folly, North Myrtle, they were busier than this at 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, people are reserving their spots by 8 a.m. because if you don't reserve it, you'll lose it. No, it's going to be a hot day in Biloxi, and it's not like the water will be much help. As you said, it's still very warm out in the water, around 90 degrees or so. So, all right, a lot to watch and pay attention to along the Gulf Coast, in through Mississippi, through Louisiana and Texas. All things we'll be watching. Mike, appreciate you. Go reapply that sunscreen, my friend. It looks very hot and sunny over there.
When a ripple is a big deal. When a ripple is a big deal
Over
in the
the-
Mississippi, and that's where we've got our own Mike Seidel. Mike is out there in Biloxi. Actually, you're baking up on the sand right now, and that water temperature, I know it's in the mid-80s, but that doesn't seem like much of a relief to me, man.
Not much, unless I go diving in there. But the temperature is now 93. The heat index is 100, not unexpected. We have a heat advisory today until 7. That should be the last one for a while because we'll have more clouds tomorrow and Thursday and a better chance of rain and thunderstorms. The sand temperature, let me get this for you, 128 degrees. So you need some shoes on or you'll get a first-degree burn unless you've got calluses or some kind of feet that can deal with that. But, boy, just walking from the boardwalk here, the water's got a light chop right now. We came out here this morning before sunrise at 5 a.m., and it was glassy. It was like a lake. The tide is coming in, high tide, just coming up in the next hour, but the tidal range here only is about a foot. And some days they only have one high tide because of the configuration of the Gulf. And that's not going to be an important factor because we're not going to have to worry about surge with this system, not at this point. None of the global models, the GFS or the European, are doing much with this. The spin has to get into the Gulf of Mexico, and then the hurricane hunters will go back out there. Well, they didn't get out there today. They canceled that mission. They scrubbed it. They're going to go out there tomorrow about midday and take a look at the system as it gets into the Gulf. Bob, there's not much of a spin there. There's not a lot of convection with it. We'll see what happens as it gets over the Gulf of Mexico later today and tonight. Now, the water's warm, but that's not the end-all for development. The offshoot of this is rain and thunderstorms. There's the radar forecast in motion through Friday, and you can see there's nothing really organized. There's some semblance of rotation in the rainfall pattern, but other than that, it's just rain, some thunderstorms, and some squally weather with the storms. So the impact remains right now forefront rainfall and rainfall totals. Highest numbers right now expected in the Mississippi Gulf Coast area and also southern Louisiana, generally south of I-10 and south of Lake Pontchartrain. Those parishes from New Orleans south could see as much as 3 to 5 inches of rain. Maybe some spots get more. And this is through Friday and Saturday. So it's not going to come all at once. But again, there's going to be that flash flood threat, and we'll see, I don't know about later today with the update from the Weather Service offices in the late afternoon, but certainly late tonight, tomorrow's package will probably include some flood watches in some of that area for the impending heavy rain, Bob. But in the meantime, we are shaking and baking out here on the beach with a heat index at 100 and just a light breeze, which continues to blow northwest offshore. So we're not getting any cooling effect from a land breeze at this point here in Biloxi.
No, not at all. And Mike, that was my next question to you. Is you're on that beach, you've got the heat advisory, it feels like 100 even more. What are you doing in between your live shots to cool down? You're not sticking around on the beach, right? Are you going somewhere?
We're getting into the shade. I had lunch in an air-conditioned environment up here at the restaurant. So, yeah, we're staying out of the hot sun because it'll just take it out of you. And I've got plenty of sunscreen on, but you have to reapply that because of perspiration. I want to show you this. These are some of the planes taking off at Keesler. Lloyd, we've got another one going overhead. This is an Air Force plane, and I'm not sure. Now, earlier today, they were doing a training mission with the hurricane hunters. That one went out around about 8 or 9 this morning. That looks, I'm not sure if that's another one of those planes. That's the second one that's taken off in the past 5 or 6 minutes. So gives you an idea of how close Keesler Air Force Base is to where we're standing. And once again, reiterating, they have a mission scheduled for tomorrow, and they hope to get out there around 18Z, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. They don't have very far to go, just from here over towards areas south of, say, Apalachicola, where that is the closest rain right now, Bob, is some storms between Tallahassee, Apalachicola, and Panama City. There's nothing for the rest of the Panhandle and nothing imminent in this area, just some cumulus clouds popping. And when the sun goes behind the cloud, it feels a whole lot better out here today.
I bet it does, man. At C-130 looked pretty cool, though. And let me guess, Mike, grouper sandwich, right?
No, you're not. No. I had the yellowfin tuna tacos with the avocado sauce.
Fair enough.
Oh my gosh, boy, did that hit the spot. You know, it looks like it's going back to Keesler. Maybe they're just doing go-arounds. I'm not sure, but it looks like it's going back to Keesler right now.
Very cool. Mike, I love your stuff, man. There's always something popping in your live shot. Even when there's not, there's still something going. Mike, great stuff out there in Biloxi. We'll talk to you, man. Thanks.
All right, so let's get